Hey guys, this is Jensen here. At the start of the week, I posted a tweet on my Twitter asking for responses to a VOD review worksheet that I put out, and I think that there's some interesting learning lessons that we can take away from the 2020 League of Legends World Championship. Now, this is an exercise that I usually do with players whenever there's a tournament, but I felt that it might be interesting to see how the public would respond to such a challenge of sorts. To get things started off, we will be looking at the fourth game of Fnatic versus Top Esports, and we are looking at a faithful team fight in which Fnatic lost, allowing Top Esports back into the game and allowing them to make the reverse sweep happen. Now, the question was which of the following reasons are reasons as to why Fnatic loses this team fight, and the four options given was the first being wrong spell order, the second being target calling, the third being the positioning at the start of the fight, and the fourth being them having the wrong team fight mode. Now, the objective, being the Drake, meant that the Fnatic's approach towards this, trying to go for all in front to back, was the correct idea, and the target calling, likewise, to play in a front to back setup, was correct as well. However, most people got it correct, with Karpok pointing out that the spell order was actually wrong, and most people who watched the OMB stream, he actually pointed out that the set out the E into the gather R would have won the team fight for them. Not sure why my slides are going backwards, but I'll have to make do with that. So Positive Penguin pointed this out as well and noted that made a similar observation that if Fnatic were able to coordinate the sequence of spells that they would be wanting to take the fight in, they would have been able to win this, as Sigelo Ultimate would be able to zone the rest of TES from being able to follow up, and Fnatic's own DPS sources would be able to step forward and deal damage. However, what most people missed out in the responses to this was considering the positioning that could be taken in this setup. Now, if we were to look at this exact scenario, what happens is the Fnatic pulls the trigger and goes it onto TES. Knight is able to kite into the pocket towards the top side, and as both Whipple and Hylissang, both tanks who are capable of tanking the poke that can come through from TES, are not in front of the DPS sources, Knight is able to land a crucial shock blast onto both Reckless and Selfmade. This takes them out of the fight. And as a result, they are zoned, and throughout this entire fight, Reckless only hits 2 Ws and a single auto attack, while Selfmade only throws out his Q and W and is unable to effectively participate in this fight as a AD carry of sorts. So this was pointed out by Karpok, where he pointed out that Fnatic having to walk through the narrow path and this choke, which is X'd out in orange, does not contribute well to them, and it's also one of the reasons why they are not able to win this fight against Top Esports, as Knight's positioning on Jace was able to zone them by not having the front line block for the DPS sources. The second game that we looked at in this VOD review worksheet was G2 vs Damwon, and there are two questions in this. The first question asks, how would you describe the laning dynamic between Sylas and Twisted Fate, what they want to achieve in relation to each other in the context of each team's win conditions, and the type of help they would need for the jungler? And once again, Positive Penguin and Karpok came through with rather solid answers, where Positive Penguin, to quote him, TF wants to push the lane early with his range advantage to help Hackrim contest Scuttle Crabs. Sylas needs to find roams and steal TF ultimate to get his side lanes ahead, and TF himself doesn't really need to look for roams since Damwon Gaming scales much better into the late game. He needs to answer roams from Caps by looking for him on the map. Later on, Damwon Gaming scales much better, and G2's only hope is to get a hit in the early game and snowball side lanes. So this implies that Twisted Fate only needs to pin down the Sylas within the lane and doesn't need to actively make plays himself. Whereas Karpok had a more detailed explanation, citing that TF should slow push the first few waves and he should be able to harass under the turret on the crash, and this will then enable his jungler to safely farm the level tree and get out of trouble. And I think that this is important things to note. He brings up the dynamic between the mid laner and jungler in relation to how they want to operate with each other. And this gives us the all-in versus poke setup, where the Sylas effectively wants to look for all-in onto Twisted Fate, who's playing the poke side of the matchup. So in these type of scenarios, what the Sylas is looking for usually be a ganking jungler, whereas the Twisted Fate will be happy for going for enforcement. As we saw in game 5 of Top Esports vs Fnatic, when they did pick the Sylas counterpick into the Twisted Fate, they paired it together with the likes of a Lee Sin, who was able to do 3 camps into ganking mid, which would then force the Twisted Fate flash, and once Twisted Fate loses his flash against a Lee Sin and a Silas, it would be very difficult for him to play the game and continue to play the poke side of the matchup. Whereas for the likes of Twisted Fate, he would be much more happier with the likes of a farming jungler that can simply invade the opponent, check which side of the map the opponent jungler is on, and then enforce for the lane and prevent or be able to cover for potential to redo. So the third question asks, if that you were Yan cosplaying Lilia in this game, what would your goals be and how should your path to achieve them, and what changes do you make to G2's draft to better facilitate the Lilia versus Hacker matchup? Now this is a setup where what the Lilia wants to be doing is that she wants to be able to do Raptors into Raptors using pushing side lanes and have access to a strong 2v2. So this is where G2 received much criticism in the draft by picking the Silas in the mid lane where they don't necessarily have the strongest 2v2 combination. As we mentioned earlier, Lilia wants to be paired with a mid laner that plays a longer range poke setup. So perhaps the likes of an Orianna or simply putting Lucian in the mid lane will be much better into the Twisted Fate in this scenario. Now the last question is a math question. It asks you to calculate the amount of damage that Senna, Graves, and Tahm Kench can deal in a single rotation and determine if TSM's bot lane can defend this dive to retreat. And this is an exercise I usually do with players to help them understand what are the limits of the champion and if they can make dives happen as a whole. So this is what the damage numbers look like, and as a whole, these champions combined, after factoring the resistances and magic resistances of the affiliates, you should be expecting about 700 ability damage, combining all the abilities assuming that they hit, which would put them within 2 auto attacks of being able to take out Aphelios, who is currently at 2/3 of his health and only having 810 effective HP. And at 2 auto attacks, this makes it very simple and safe and effective to dive. However, Aphelios has flash, so he can flash the big damage spell, so he is capable of flashing the Gragas Q and flashing the Senna R, should he not be eating the root. And this would bring things up to 5 auto attacks, and with the Trash being able to body block the Graves damage and the Tahm Kench being a melee champion, 5 auto attacks from Senna would be a stretch to go for in a dive in such a scenario. Should they look for the Trash, who has 862 HP in this scenario? This would go up from 6 auto attacks needed from the Senna all the way up to 9 auto attacks combined between all 3 champions. And thus, this dive can actually be rather difficult should TSM decide to use their flash to try to outplay it instead of running away like they did in the game itself. And that's set up for today's video. I apologize, there's some little bit of technical glitches on the screen, but I hope you were able to learn something from looking at this experience. If you want to, go rewatch some of them, pause it, and look through the thinking process and see if this was beneficial to you. The Worlds might be over, but the next season is coming soon, and if you missed it, I was announced as the head coach of Mortals Academy, and you could tune into that, as I will be releasing videos on a weekly basis to share more insight into the scouting process and what does a coach look for in new players. And with that wraps it up. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please do consider giving this a like and subscribing to my channel.